This is the 100th anniversary edition, the Holy Bible, the 1611 King James Version. And the people whom we are debating wanted to base much of what we say and teach on the King James Version, bearing the Apocrypha books as being inspired of God, just as the 66 books of the Bible. I want to just say something about this. I went through it very carefully. And interestingly, the Apocrypha is in the Bible, but it's not of the Bible. Is in the Bible, but it's not of the Bible. And I want to this is
Joel Osteen, Joyce Meyer, T.D. Jakes, Kenneth Copeland, Benny Hinn, Paula White, Creflo Dollar, and countless other so-called Christian teachers have become rich selling you your dream life in the name of Jesus Christ.
According to the scripture, if you give to God, you ought to be so blessed you don't know what to do with yourself.
When you give to Joel Osteen,
you are lending to the Lord, and He will repay you. God knows how to repay you.
I started giving on that level so that God would owe me. Oh, y'all don't hear what I'm saying? You can't handle that. I started giving on the level where I put God in debt. And God said, I'll owe no man. I started giving on the money that I wanted to make. I started giving on a deal that hadn't closed yet.
Joyce Meyer.
The Bible says giving and receiving, but he said God has taught me by studying that word receiving that another way to say that word is receipting. The word receiving means receipting. And so he said, when you give, you get a receipt in heaven, that when you have a need, you can then go with your receipt and say, you see, God...
It's a little bit crazy. You're suddenly blurry now. I wonder if anything was real. All our history's hazy, like driving in the pouring rain. Are we in too deep to heal? Up tomorrow, tell me everything you know. trying to be. I need to make it clear before we're leaving here. Before we're leaving here. I know it ain't easy, but there's something left to hold on to. We can work it through, you don't have to go. There's a future here with me. We'll find the light in the cloud. Be everything you know I wanna hear. I'm trying to be open, but that window is closing. And either way, either way, I need to make it clear before we're leaving here.
And shalom, everyone. Shalom. I want to welcome everyone to the house of the Lost Sheep of Israel. I'm Elder Michael Johnson, the pastor over here with the Lost Sheep of Israel and King James Bible University. I want to welcome everyone here, and we have a pretty good, interesting teaching we're going to be going through. But before we do, I do want to have announcements. I have a couple of them I want to make for each and every one of us. Today at 3 o'clock Pacific time, 5 o'clock Central time, 6 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to be going over to King James Bible University doing a lesson on overcoming temptation with the word, basically with the word of God, looking at Matthew 4:1 through 14. It's going to be very interesting, and it's going to be highly educational, as this one's going to be, on why we want people to make sure you have your pencils and papers ready for this teaching here, as well as the one that's getting ready to start. And today, I'm going to announce it again that we have another we're looking at this one for the baptism that's coming up in San Antonio. I will be having a fast meeting in the back. This is for the people who are planning on attending. I'm going to say that again. This is for the people who are planning on attending. The people who just want to see what's going on, we're asking you guys not to come in the back. Well, we're looking for the people who are specifically looking to come to the baptism, either for the baptism or coming for the blockchain. Whatever one you're coming for, make sure you come in the back, and we're gonna make sure that the people who's supposed to be back there because we have some important information we want to share with you. And we're looking at this as we've been going through. The same thing is on the daily, we do our prayer. So if you would like to join us for prayer, you're always welcome to join us every morning at 6 a.m. Pacific time, 8 a.m. Central time, and 9 a.m. Eastern time, to where we have a daily prayer. If you're part of this congregation over here, if you're part of this body, you can always send in to the same place as baptism at kjbu.org, and you can ask for prayer, and we will make sure we will include you specifically in the prayer, and we will petition the Most High that He will look at least gracefully and mercifully upon you. So those things we'll be looking at. And now we want to pay attention to one thing, and we want to remember something, as what we were saying before, and getting a better understanding on this one here. We're looking at the 10 Commandments understanding their significance. We want to understand their significance in modern times. And just based on that, we want to sit there and same thing. This has to be 100% interactive because we have some things we actually want to be going through. We want to see exactly where people mind at to make sure we can help you even more so with the information that's actually going to be given out. So with that, I'm going to ask this, and you don't have to give them the long drawn out thing. This is just an I for yes and put an N for no. But the main thing is, do anybody understand the significance? The significance in what the commandments are according to God. That's just an I or no, or with an N. No long drawn out thing, just an I, just like you just raising your hand, or if you don't want to raise your hand. If you don't want to raise your hand, you don't have to put in or anything. But if you just doing it, then we want to find out. So we got a lot of people, got a lot of people who know. That's good, that's fine. Because making sure, please make sure you have your pencil and paper ready. And with the people with the eyes, it might get some shocks behind you, but we're going to find out what's going on. Because just like I said, this is interactive. Interactive, we're going to find out. So we got a lot of people saying yes and no and yes and no. So now what we got to do is look at this. We got to look at something and to help each and every one of us out as we moving forward. And I want to make sure as we move forward, we want to be very distinct on what we're doing. We have to be steadfast on what we're doing. So we got to understand the significance. We got to understand the significance of the desires of obedience to God will. I want you to keep that in mind. In his will, in his commandments, are they still relevant today in the modern times? So to do this, we have to seek the understanding of God. We have to seek his understanding in their significance and seeking the benefits within them. So these are certain categories we're going to go through. We're going to look at them. We're going to look at these real close. One of them we're going to see personal growth. And now, and to let you know ahead of time, the main reason why I'm even taking this, and we have to take a small turn in what we're doing, because this is a 100%, and I'm letting you know up front, this is a 100% spiritual teaching. Because what it is, it's going to give you the tools on all the precepts that all the elders and myself, we've been doing all this time for the years we've been here. This is where now you can put these tools together and you're going to become a master craftsman. But you got to know how to apply it. And that also contends with you going back, looking at those scriptures. But when you're going back, looking at the teaching, seeing what's going on, seeing how it's being applied, you'll see how this is being applied. This is 100% spiritual. So some people are going to sit there and say, I didn't get it. Okay, I get it. That mean you wasn't over here, so you wasn't understanding. In this personal growth. So what we have to do, we have to examine. I want you to make sure you write this down. And I'm gonna ask the moderators the same thing. As I had this up there, for them to put it in there in the chat, to where you know exactly what these bullet points on what we're gonna look at are and what you need to do. We want is personal growth and development. That's one. Mark that one. And then we're going to explain some of that. We're going to get into it. But this is one thing. We have to explain our own desires. We have to explain and examine our own desires and learn to distinguish them. Understand what I'm saying here? Because we got to distinguish them between those that is positive and those that are negative. Because we're going to have negative personal growth and we got positive personal growth. We need to understand the difference between the two. That's one. So now once we understand that, then we can better understand ourselves and we can work towards the personal growth and the development of the one that we want to do good on. We learn to cultivate then that positive desires, and then the positive desire should be the same desire that aligning yourself with the will of God in His commandment, and you avoid the negative ones to where those ones will lead you astray. Do everybody agree? And we just always put in the I or N so we can do this. And I shouldn't have to keep saying it, but then if you understand what I'm saying, just put an I there and you understand where I'm coming from. So that's one, what we got to make sure we understand. We got to learn how to toss the bad, keep the good. Toss the bad, keep the good. It's real simple. And we have another one we're going to look at because we want to make sure. Because once we start getting into this, we're going to get into the nooks and crannies on this. Oh, you're going to change your world. You're going to change your world because you want to understand what these commandments are. The next one we got to look at is moral. We got to look at moral and ethical behavior. That's number 2. I want you to make sure you keep this down. Number 2, we want to understand what moral and ethical behavior is. We got to understand it. We got to understand what the desires and the differences of its relationships that describe with sin that can help us make moral and ethical decisions on our daily lives. I'm telling you, this is a beautiful thing that's going to happen. But we have to understand that. And we can learn to resist negative desire. We can learn to resist those things. We can learn to resist negative desires, and it will lead us towards sinful behavior, because if we hold on to them, that's what it's going to do. But we got to change that, because that behavior, we got to look at cultivating that positive one that leads us towards this virtuous behavior that's towards God. Real simple, ain't it? It's real simple, but we're going to look at the inner workings on this. We got to look at the inner workings on this, how this is going. And we have to look at the other one, because we have a couple of more we're going to do. But one of the other ones is strengthening our obedience with God. I know people sitting there like, dang, why did that show up? It has to. It has to. I get it. But we have to strengthening our obedience with God. Y'all can dislike it all you want to, but you put that down. You write that down there. You write it down. I know a lot of us don't like that. But by that, we have to understand desires. We have to understand desires. Desires is take pleasure in wanting and hope. That's what desires are. Take pleasure, wanting, and hope. Keep that in mind. But write it down. Cause we gotta put all this stuff together. See, once we get this wisdom, and then we're gonna see how to work it. But with this, we can learn how to recognize clearly, to understand what desires of the flesh are. Everybody with me? Then we can understand what desires of the flesh are. This can help us build a stronger dependent upon God based on the desires and respect of it. Everybody with me on that? I want you to stay with me on that. Some of you in there, Elder Johnson setting us up for failure. Hey, I had to eat these cookies all week. I had to eat the cookies all week. So I'm just passing you the box. I'm just passing you the box now. So we have that one. We understand what's going on. But now we want to make sure this other one. I want to make sure we understand this one, the spiritual growth. I want to make sure we understand spiritual growth. It's spiritual growth. Yeah, it's a box we got to open up. It's a box we got to open up, but it's a good thing, because this is the spiritual growth is one of the catches is renewing the minds. We got to renew our minds. It's like we're going to a place and getting a new motor. We're going to a place and we're going to get a whole new motor. And what we're doing is going to renew our minds. So we got to renew our minds with the desires of God and the commandments. So then we can grow spiritually and deepen our service to God, being a servant to God. This leads us to a greater peace. One, leads us to a greater purpose and fulfillment in our lives. So we got to put all these together. We got to put them all together and get them all laid out. So the significance of this modern times of the 10 Commandments, desires of obedience. So it's desires of obedience in God's will and his commandments, and what we need to still see that's still relevant today in these times. That's what we want to make sure we get. And then this will help us grow personally, and where we can make moral and ethical decisions to strengthen our understanding and deepen our spiritual life. See how all that works together? I know a lot of people, we don't like that, but because we define it, that's technically what we like to do. So what we got to do, we got to do a couple of things. So we got these tools now. We want to sit there and we want to start making this cake. And we need to see what's going on, but can we compare something? I want to understand, can we compare something? And what I want you to see is, I want you to hold to this, what I'm getting ready to show you. Because the main thing is this, is desires are compared to concepts. I want you to think about what I'm telling you. Desires is tied to concepts, meaning lust and cravings. These terms is used to describe this strong intent to which people have these selfish desires which lead individuals even away from God's will, desires and commandments. This is why I said this was really important. It's really, really, really important. So I want to take you somewhere. We want to understand something. So we're gonna start digging into this and find out what's going on, because it's important to where we know what's happening. Because the main thing is, with these desires, these lusting cravings, these things that's according to the flesh can get us in trouble. Paul warns us against this, about lust of the flesh. We'll see this over here when we look at Galatians chapter 5, verse 16. And it tells us right here. It says, "This I say then, walk in spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh." You see how this works? We don't want to fulfill the lust of the flesh, the desires of the flesh. We don't want to fulfill that. And it urges the followers of Christ to where we need to flee from those type of things. We need to be able to flee from those. Paul continued even when he was in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22. He tells us the same thing. He says, "Flee also youthful lusts, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace, with them that call on the Lord, the Creator, out of a pure heart." Key. That's key. So we want to understand that. We want to understand all these things. We want to understand we need to flee from this lust of the flesh. We got to get away from this flesh. We got to get away from this thought pattern to where we can resist that. Because if we fall to that, we're going to fall to what? We're going to fall to sin. So we need to learn how to resist that. We got, because it's going to show the same thing, which is a source of a temptation that we have to get away from. But each person is tempted, and he's lured, and he's enticed by his own desires. So everybody's desire might be something different. Desires is conceived, and we want to understand something again to where we want to make sure we really get what I'm talking about. Because desires conceive sin when it's fully grown. Did anybody understand what I just said? Desires conceive sin when it's fully grown. See, sin starts off with that desire, and the more it grows, once it becomes fully grown, then sin is fully there. And sins bring forth death, and it's fully grown. Actually, let's look at something. I want to show you something. And let's look at this in James chapter 1. But we want to look at verse 14. It says, "But every man is tempted." So all of us are tempted. Everybody's sitting there saying, yeah, they get it. So every man is tempted. Every man is tempted. It says, "When he is drawn away of his own lust," he's drawn away to his own lust and enticed. This is what we don't want to get caught up on. We don't want to get caught up on it. But why do it? Just going to say verse 15. It says, "Then when lust hath conceived it, it bringeth forth sin." It's fully grown. It became fully grown. And it says, "And when it's finished, it bringeth forth death." You let it sit there and germinate and build itself. We got to get out there. We got to get out that kind of business. This is not the business we should be in. We should not let sin sprout up all these little seeds, and then as it's growing itself, and we cultivating it. And then once it's fully grown, death. I'm telling you, we're going to get caught up like this. Don't get caught up with that. Desires is also a contrast with the understandings of obedience to the will of God. That's the one. That's why we got to learn to take the good and throw out the bad. Even in the book of Psalms, it describes the importance of delighting God's law and meditating on it day and night, rather than to give to sinful desires. It tell you, blessed is a man who stand not in the counsel of the wicked. Actually, I already got it right here. Let's look at Psalms chapter 1. We're going to look at 1 and 2. Watch what it says here. It says, blessed, wisdom is given to that man walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. His delight is in the law of the Spirit of God. And in his law doeth he meditate day and night. Make common sense, don't it? Making more common sense. So we need to cultivate that thought. We need to start cultivating that thought with each and every one of us. We need to make sure we have this within us. Because desires can take us on two roads. We see that. Because you got desires of the flesh, you got desires of God. Everybody agree with that? We got two desires that's running out there. You got the desires of the lust of the flesh, and you got the desires in the will of God. There's two things out there. In these roads is look at them as two lines, two yellow lines of wood that can lead us to destruction, and the other one can send us to a meaningful way of life, which the road we can get on is based on the one we're going to choose. It's based on the one we're going to choose. So I want to give you two different analogies to where we just can understand where's Elder Johnson coming from? Where is he coming from? So I'm going to explain something two different ways. So think of it one way, like think of desires like a garden, what we talked about earlier. And it says just like when you need something, when I told you when you need something, you're going to plant this seed. You're going to plant the seed. But then within this seed supposed to be the word of God. But then you have to weed out those bad plants and make room for good ones to grow. So you need to be careful about the desires you nature in your heart. The same thing. You got little weeds that's in there. Little weeds in your heart. As your heart is trying to be pure with the seed of God, you got little weeds popping up, and you got to learn how to pull them out. Pull them out. Weed them out. But if you let those little bad weeds grow, those desires going to grow, and then they're going to take over the whole garden. Then they're going to choke out all the good plants. It's not complex. But if you choose to focus on that good desire, it'll flourish because you're weeding out everything, and then you can have joy in life, and you can bring up a 10 garden, and then which those desires is watered, which the ones that you poured up was weeds, and you can take them off and let them burn. It's common sense. Common sense, but we're learning from what we need to do. But let me explain it to you another way. Desires can come from two competing forces. I explained them. Desires can come from two competing forces. One going to be coming from the flesh, the other one going to be coming from the spirit. Our fleshly desires has often led us a path down destruction, while our spiritual desires leads us to a more meaningful and fulfilling life. So it's important to recognize these desires, and they are in conflict all the time with each other. We got to choose which one we're going to follow. The commandments of God to guide us to our spiritual desires, or the way of harmful desires of the flesh. And it's not where it's going to stop sometimes. It's not where it's going to stop. This is going to consistently keep checking us. And we got to make sure our choices is aligned with the desires of God. So we have to resist and pull from and away from the fleshly desires. We express to where we can see this more, what's going on. I want to show you something. Let's look at something real quick. I I want to take you over to Ecclesiastes, and I want to show you something. And it's most people, it's for Sirach. We're going to look at chapter 2, verse 1. And it says, my son, if. So he's telling you, providing thou come to serve the Lord, prepare your soul for temptation. Huh? Wait a minute, what is in the Bible? Wait a minute. If I'm going to come serve the Lord, the Creator, I have to be prepared for temptation. The reason why I'm laughing, I'm going to tell you why I'm laughing. It's just like a basketball player. Just like a basketball player. Let's use a basketball player. And let's say they know, all the people in the neighborhood know he's going to go at the number 1 seed. Or he's just going to go professional. And he looked like buckwheat. We'll say that. He looked like buckwheat. Don't you know he had to prepare his heart for temptation? I'm talking about some of the most beautiful women from the neighborhood and all over is going to see he's the most beautiful man they ever want to see in their life. But they looking past him because they looking at what he have and what he's getting ready to get. So it's the same thing here. It says, my son, if thou come to serve the Creator, prepare thy soul for temptation, because that's going to get checked. That's going to get checked. It got even more so when you look at this, and we want to check a little bit more in this. I want to take you over to Tobit. We want to see something else. In Tobit chapter 1, we're going to look at verse 15. And it's going to tell us a little bit more. And then we're going to find out about these laws. It says, do that to no man which thou hateth. Drink not wine to make thee drunken. Neither let drunkenness grow with thee on thy journey. It's interesting, isn't it? These things become very interesting. The reason why we want to make sure we don't want nothing in our way. We don't want nothing in our way here. So I want to make sure we putting this salt and pepper and everything on the word to where we can make sure as once we start getting into where we start to cook, we get what's going on. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6, and looking at verse 17, he's going to clarify some things right here for us. 17, it says this. It says, for the very true beginnings of her, which is the spirit, is the desire of discipline. Do we need to unpack that? Okay, so her is the spirit, because if God is in the position of he, the almighty creator, then his spirit is in the position of a her. And with this her, it's telling you right there, it says in the very true beginning of her is desire of discipline. So if you have the spirit of God in you, the first thing going to hit you is obedience, discipline. And that's a full thought. It says, and the care of discipline is love. I'm telling you, it's slapping us all over the place. Don't worry about it, because I got slapped all over it all week. So don't feel bad. But the main thing is we have to be, and most people try to train you, tell you need to be obedient to these preachers. You need to be obedient to this leader. When he tell you to do this, you just do it. That's stupidity. That's ignorance. You're supposed to be obedient to the word of God, not to some fleshly man. Not to some man. He'll tell you anything. Bark like a dog. Hop on one like, that's what we do. That's what we do. We do this kind of stuff. So it's telling you right up front who to be obedient to. And we're supposed to be obedient to God if we have his spirit. If he gave us his spirit, then we can be obedient to God. It's that straightforward. Even in Baruch 4:4, it says, "O Israel." It's the O Israel. Happy are we, for things that are pleasing to God are made known unto us. How? Because we're supposed to have that spirit. If we have the spirit, that's in play. If you don't have the spirit, I don't get it. If you have the spirit, you get it. But if you don't have the spirit, you don't get it. Let's go a little bit more. Let's go a little bit more. Let's see how we're going to see this and understand it. And we'll find this over there in Judith, chapter 8, but verse 17. Something real cool right here. Because it's telling you, therefore, O Israel. Therefore, O Israel. Therefore, O Israel. But that's okay. It says, let us wait for salvation of him. Yeah. We're supposed to be pleasing to him. And did we get it? Yeah, hopefully we got that. Is a salvation, and call upon him to help us, and he will hear our voice if it please him. But if we have his spirit buried in us, and the first thing that is in us is discipline and making sure we pay attention to the Creator from the beginning, from the word that he sent us, and then happy are we because of things that are pleasing to God. So therefore, let us wait for salvation and call upon him, and then he is going to come get us, because it's like he's waiting on our call. He's waiting on our call. That clear. So the same thing is, we want to think about something else. So the same thing is. So the thing is I'm gonna ask a question again. And this is I for yes and N for no. Can desires and commandments is one of the same? Is desires and commandments one of the same? And that's this for everybody to answer. I'm just gonna wait to see what they answer. I'm gonna take me a drink of water and see what you have there. Okay, we getting them rolling in. You're rolling in. Got a mixture. I for yes and N for no. Very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Highly interesting. So, what we want to do is, this is why I said this is why this teaching is so necessary, and why we have to go back. And look at a lot of teachings that I put forth, because this is all going to do, and that's fine. I appreciate it. Appreciate that. It's not sure. Appreciate that. Appreciate it. We got a couple of views. I'm not sure. 100%. I appreciate the honesty. Now, what we're looking at is, if you go back and you look at the teachings I've done, the precepts I ran, and what we're doing, this is why we're pushing in more so to make sure you can learn how to understand spiritually what's going on. I need you to spiritually understand what's going on. I'm putting forth a lot of information, and I need to make sure you clearly get it. And this will help you to never fall. So the question was asked, can desires and commandments be one and the same? And people sitting there, some saying not sure, some saying yes, some saying no. And we want to look at this. We cannot compare them as being the same. The 10 Commandments, and we're going to take this for an example. And are they one of the same? No, they're two different. They're both different things. And we're going to tear it down. We're going to find out what this is. But this is one of the problems why we can have problems. This is why I said it's very important to understand what desires are and what commandments are. It's very important. This is why a lot of people, when they put out information, and it mixes up people. But the thing is, what we do over here with the Lost Sheep of Israel and with King James Bible, we put out a lot of information to which you can learn from it. And now you're putting this other stuff in your spirit, and you hold on to this, on what I'm going to be showing you. You hold on to it, and you'll never get lost. That I promise you. You'll never get lost. But we cannot compare the 10 Commandments as being desires. That's number one. You cannot compare 10 Commandments as being desires. The commandments of God is a set of morals. Those are a set of morals and laws that was given by Moses, by God. That was given to Moses by God. Sorry the way I'm saying it. But that was done on Mount Sinai when it was recorded in the Hebrew Bible. So these commandments, you could see that it guide a behavior. It guides the behavior and establishes a framework. I want you to understand what I'm saying. It establishes this framework that is ethical and moral conduct. I want you to understand that. Commandments. That's a framework that we have to work in. You can even say, well, most people who work in white collar positions a lot of times, look at it as a directive. Look at it as a directive. And you see the directive you'll see in when you look at Exodus chapter 20, is to tell you, thou shalt not kill. That's a directive. That's a directive. Thou shalt not steal, and honor thy father and mother. You catch that? You see how that's running. That's not a desire. That's like a directive. Actually, let me put it over here. So the same thing. This is why we say we want to understand the difference, to where you can always have that there and understand it. And he's telling you, the same thing, honor thy father and thy mother. These things there. But I want to show you something. I want to show you a desire. We want to understand desires. And then we're going to break desires down even more. We're going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12. And personally understand it for its fullness. It says, now, Israel, what doeth the Lord thy God, the Spirit of thy God, require of thee? Require. We want to understand that. The reason why this is an individual, and it's telling you about individual wills and requirements that arise from human nature, even from nature and circumstances. It can be positive. It can be negative. It can be positive. It can be negative. It can be selfish or selflessness. So when you look at this, it's telling you what's required of thee. But to fear, meaning to desire the Lord thy God, the Spirit of thy God, to walk in all his ways, to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God, the Spirit of thy God, with all thy heart and all thy soul. So as it's telling you, it's saying fear, we know is desire. We know to desire the Lord thy God, the Spirit of thy God, the one that he is giving you. You take on that spirit, and you should love that spirit that he is giving you. Take that spirit on. That's what he's telling you. While you can see with the commandments over here, what he's telling you over here, don't take his name in vain, don't do these things. He's telling you all these things, what you don't do. Don't steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness. See, these things, this is why I said these are like directives. And the reason why I'm holding it to directives, even though directives not in the Bible, but we want to make sure we understand the directive, because most people they can get it. Because when you look at 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 9, we're going to find out clear. It says, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless. Yeah. That's the point. That's the point of the directive. That's the point of why he wrote that. It's not made for a righteous man. But it's for the lawless, the disobedient, for the ungodly, for the sinners, for the unholy and profane, murderers of fathers, murderers of mothers, manslayers, for whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, men stealers, and liars, perjured persons, if there be any other thing contrary to sound doctrine. It's clear. It's clear. These directives is not for a righteous person. Those are not desires. Those are directives. Those are things you bet not do if you look in the road with him. Let's look at something. I want to show you something before we move forward. And we're going to look at this in Matthew chapter 5, verse 18. I want to show you this before we move forward. Just look at something. And again, this is a problem that people have. And it says, for verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth, so heaven and is including, so it's heaven including earth, pass one jot or one tittle, shall no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. But people say it's all fulfilled. Really? No, you fulfilling that the law is not made for righteousness. You fulfilling those things, which you're not righteous. So this is why it says the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless. So we have a lot of people out there being lawless. Because he's saying this man fulfilled it, so now we can do whatever we want to do. Now I want you to think about that. This is why we do certain things. This is why we eat what we eat. This is why we do what we do. I'm telling you, we have a big problem here. For a few thousand years, people acknowledge the Ten Commandments as a set of rules and ethical principles. Think about that, because I sat in it. I sat in a place where the Ten Commandments was a set of morals and ethical principles. The Ten Commandments are, and they remain relevant to modern times because they provide the moral and ethical foundation for individuals and the society as a whole. Yeah, that one, I agree with that 100%. They promote the respect of authority. Yeah, I agree with that. But it helps to build honesty and integrity in the concern of others. But then are you following these set of principles? This, as it's set forth, the Ten Commandments is for people who continue to let it be there as a guidance for inspiration for society. They got a problem because it's relevant when they continue to endure the generations to come. Ten Commandments has been recognized as a foundation set of morals and for 1,000 years, and they considered the cornerstone of their way of life. An ethical way where they revere people in many different ways and cultures and backgrounds throughout history. As God's will. As God's will, and it's not. Are you guys with me on it? I'm telling you, and it's not. And he tell you that's God's will in Exodus 20. And it's not. So it remains why the Ten Commandments remain relevant in the modern times. It makes it so clear with the guidelines. Same thing with the behaviors when we go back here, when we look at this here. 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 9. Knowing that the law is not made for a righteous man. Knowing that the law is not made for a righteous man. That's why it's clear. It's clear as day. That's why it's there. Because the world is a moral in its realism, and it becoming more prevalent that the Ten Commandments offer an objective standard of right and wrong. But they like to provide a moral compass for individuals of a society as a whole, helping people to really just kind of navigate this complex type ethical situation of a sinfulness and to make sound decisions of righteousness that consist of their values and desires. I'm telling you, it's the reason it even had to come out, even sound crazy. Another reason why the Ten Commandments are even relevant today. Why are they relevant today? They promote the disrespect of authority. Think about that. This is what I'm saying. It's crazy. They adhere to these and they build dishonesty and encourage the concerning of others. Following the principles set forth, the Ten Commandments show an unrighteous man in his personal responsibility for accountability. People sitting there like, man, he's talking in circles. No, that's what they're doing. And believe, and hopefully they can develop this deep respect for the law. What is required of them, not even detailed in Exodus. I'm telling you, it's a crack up. Okay, the Ten Commandments is like this set of rules, and it's set by all this unrighteousness. And he's telling you what you shouldn't be doing. Just keep in mind, it's a directive, telling you what not to do. And the guide to one to where they need to be reminded, but the inspiration reminding them of the importance of leading a life that is grounded for the principles of love and kind and justice. Promising is a call to every man striving in the world who seeks more and willing to be just and equitable. But to challenge it's a whole crazy thing. Okay, think about it this way. If we use our talents and resources to study to be a service to God, I want you to think about this. And we use that to give them and his people warning, to make his will known. It's the same reason why more relevance, why the Ten Commandments will endure for generations to come, because of disobedience. I'll say it again, because some people might not have got what I'm. Okay, the same thing is, if we sit there and we study the Bible, I'm just saying this, I'm going to say it a couple of different ways, baby. But if we study the Bible, and we study in the Bible to be a service to God and to God's people, then that can put us in a position to where we can give God's people a warning and make his will known. His will known. Not his commandment, his will known. Then this would be more relevant for the Ten Commandments. Now the Ten Commandments is even more relevant. They're way more relevant now because we have to endure these generations. Who's going to make that in the forefront? That's why I keep going back to here. Knowing that the law is not made for a righteous man, but made for the lawless, the disobedient, and for them with light. I'm telling you, it's a trip. I tell you what, let's look at something. We'll look at something. He says this in have no gods before him. I'm gonna just show you something. And we want to sit there. And we want to go to Exodus 20. And we're gonna look at verse 2, and we're gonna go down and we're gonna read down to verse 3. And I just want to show you something. It says, I am the Lord thy God, I am the Spirit of your God, that's all he's saying, in which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So you should have no other guides before him. So you shouldn't have something else guiding you. This is what he's saying. So the reasoning behind that is based on God is the creator and he's the sustainer of heaven and earth. Think about that. And all other gods are false idols of creations by who? By man. So by acknowledging God is the one true God, then the commandments emphasizes the importance of giving God the honor and worship that he deserves, even recognizing him as the supreme authority over all aspects of life. Can you agree with that? Because that's all he's saying. Not even saying much. But can you agree with that? Because that's all he's saying. But when you sit there and you say you'll create some little dumb thing and then say, this is my God. You just made it 2 seconds ago. I'm telling you, you should have no other gods before me. That's all he's saying. That's not a statement. But you have people who have this religious belief and they call it moral imperative. And it's imperative. But look what they do. They make them. And it's imperative by recognizing that he's supposed to be the only one and true God, but then they acknowledge the higher power and working in the world. And then they want to call themselves righteous and they're not. So, I don't know. It's so bad. So the commandments calls for the alignment and actions of disobedience, but it's telling you to where you have to do opposite to go towards God's will, to seek justice and righteousness and that all we do is live our lives in accordance with God's moral and ethical standards. So overall, with the commandments, when he's telling you, you should have no other gods before me, that should remind us of the importance of recognizing that God's supreme authority. And we should be aligning with his actions. And we shouldn't be saying, well, I might as well go. No, we should be aligning with him automatically. His values, seeking his justice, his righteousness, and giving honor to him. Actually, this is why it says this. Actually, let me show you something. In Isaiah says something really profound. In chapter 40, verse 17 and 18. Really profound. And we're going to look at this. And it says, all nations, in verse 17, all nations before him are being compared as nothing. That's a full thought. Think about that. All nations in the presence of him are as nothing. That's all before me, in the presence of. That's what before me, in the presence of. So all nations in the presence of him are as nothing. They accounted to him less than nothing in vanity. I don't get this. So they counted as, look at verse 18. It says, to whom then will thy liken God? So who you going to compare to God? One, we ain't nothing to God. He already compares us to nothing. And now nothing going to go make something nothing. And then we're going to compare that to God. He's telling you, or what likeness will ye compare unto him? You mean that little dumb Godhead people got walking around and got tattooed on them? Them doves, crosses. You gonna compare that to God? You think because you done tattooed that on your arm, your leg, your butt, you gonna liken that to God? You don't even have enough flesh to put God on there. I'm telling you, we need to recognize what we're doing. All nations before him are as nothing. In fact, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back a little bit more. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, in verse 35, it says something a little bit more. Verse 35. It says here, and it's telling you in verse 35, unto thee it was showed that thou mightest know that the Lord, he is God, that the Spirit of God is God. Are we good there? Are we getting that? He is God. People saying that no, the Spirit of God is God. He's telling you this. And there's none else besides him. But I'm going to show you this just to where we can make sure people sitting there, no, Jesus, no, you off again. In Exodus chapter 6, verse 7, you going to see what he says here, right, verse 7. He says, I will take you to me for a people, and I will be to you a God. He's telling you this right there in verse 7. And his name is Jehovah, because it tells you this in verse 3. He says, I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, unto Jacob by the name of God Almighty, but by my name Jehovah I was not known to them. This Lord. He said in verse 7, he tell you, and you'll know that he is the Lord, the same one over here. He is God. He is your God to you, because he's the one going to guide you. This is our problem. This is why so many of us have a problem. He goes on and he talks about where we shouldn't make, thou shalt not make any graven images, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or in the earth beneath, or in the waters under the earth. He tells us this. He tells us this. Do you know how many people out there, they walking around with the stars? They done created this thing, call it the Star of David. Dudes got logos and everything else of this. Stupidity. But people will sit under it. They create these graven images of this God. In many of these ancient cultures, these people, they create these idols and images of their God, and then they worship them as gods. It's how, even like with these Christians, you have these Christians, and even with camps, people sit there and talk about camps. They separate. Camps is nothing but Christians with a camp name on top of it, because they believe identical to a Christian. They'll say they don't, but all you gotta do is talk to them. They believe identical to a Christian. They just study a little bit more. That's it. These idols, they represent all these crazy things. But he's telling you, you should not make, and this is a commandment, you should not make any idols. He's telling you. That's not just a statement of belief of a religion, but that's a moral imperative. That's moral imperative. Prohibiting the creation of idols and these images, which emphasizes the importance of focusing on worship and your devotion to one true God. But we don't do that. The commandment, you should not make another idol. It should remind you of the importance of that. It should remind you of the importance of that. And get the understanding of it. God, in avoiding these false idols, the worshiping God in what's going on. In fact, show you something. We're going to look at something. We're going to look at something in Leviticus 26:1. It says, he shall make you no idols nor a graven image, neither rear up any standing image, neither shall ye set up any image of stone in your land to bow down unto it. I am the Lord your God. I am the Spirit of your God. It's right there, right in front. But when we do things like that, then we get caught up. I'm gonna show you why we get caught up, because we get so many people where they want to push themselves in these positions of power, and they get you to go to everything. In Psalms chapter 115 and verse 8, it says, they that make them are like unto them, so every one of them trust in them. You see, I just keep going to them, because this is what they do. It's them. The reason why it says that, the reason why this is so relevant, they that make them are like them. They even make buildings to where they can appear like God. Actually, show you the same thing. This is why I say it's really important. That's why we make ourselves very clear about what we do here. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, picking up at verse 4, because he said, because you trust in them, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God. Let they make them are like unto them, so that everyone that trusted in them, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sit in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. This is clear. Clear as day, but I promise you, this is why I say, this is why I really don't be sitting there, brothers, family. That's why I don't do that. Because people come with all kind of just stuff. Different mixtures. You got this other one. You got another one here. Where is you should not take the, here we go, right here in verse 7. I just want to show you something, just to show you something really specific. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 7, it says, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God, meaning you should not take the way of the Spirit of thy God, of your God, in vain. For the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. The Spirit of God will not hold you guiltless if you had taken his way in vain. He's not going to let you slide on this. You're not going to slide on this. You're going to take this way, and this way is to be treated holy. And if it's going to be treated holy, it's talking about going to be treated separated. And we need to make sure we have reverence to that and respect it. Even in the ancient time, where people often invoke the name of their gods. And what they do, they invoke their gods in the name of their or in curses. Using the way that they emphasize these truthfulness of the words and the seriousness of their threats and things that they do. Right now, today, you got 45,000 plus, 45,000 plus, 45,000 plus different denominations of Christian religion. 45,000 plus. The reason why most people still not going to take that seriously, well, that's okay. I want to understand something. All of them are the same. All of them are going to hold themselves Christians. But it's 45,000 plus. In their scripture, in those traditions, they teach us using God's name or God's way in the form of disrespect to detract from the true reverence and the honor that is due to God. Why did I say that? He said you should not take his name or his way in vain. See, this is not a statement about a religious belief, but it's about a moral imperative. It's a moral imperative. By prohibiting the use of God's way. You can't use that. Oath and cursing and commandments and the importance of using language and all, just disrespectful and honoring God. Taking all his way in vain. You should use it for the importance of respecting and honoring God's way. And you see it in his word, but you change and do it your own way. So when you honor and you recognize in God's name and you recognize his way, you keep it holy. You keep it separated. Separated. That's the key of it. Let's look at something. Let's take something a little bit more. Let's take this a step further and just get a better understanding. We're going to look at this in Malachi chapter 1, verse 6. The reason why I want you to see something, because we're dealing with God, and this is who we're dealing with. And you see that it says, a son honoreth his father and a servant his master, if, he said, providing then I, who the creator, or Jehovah, he said, then if I be a father, I be a creator, where's my honor? Where's my honor? If I be a master, if I be a teacher, where's my desire? Saith the Spirit of God of hosts. Unto you, O priest, you supposed to be you intermediaries of people that despise my name, that despise my way. And ye say, and we say, where have we despised thy way? Where we done this at? 45,000 plus. 45,000 plus. Where have we despised thee? I'm telling you, we can't get out our own way. Such a disrespect to God. Such a 100% disrespect to God. We can't even get out our own way. And another bigger one is here. I'm going to show you. Let's go right down to 20, because I used to have this on the sign when I was doing stuff. In Exodus 20 and actually 20 and 8, I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm looking at 20, I'm going the wrong place. It's 20 and 8 I want. And he's telling you this. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. You tell me they ain't disrespecting it? Because their holy day is tomorrow. You got many people holy day is tomorrow. It's tomorrow. So this is not just a statement, but it's about a practice belief. I want you to really pay attention to what I'm saying. It's not just a statement, but it's about a practice belief. So this is also, again, is a moral imperative. And just so we're all of us on the same page of moral imperative. This is where it's telling what I'm technically telling you. This is vitally important, being like critical. That's when I say imperative. This is vitally important and is being extremely critical. This is what I'm talking about. So by that, moral imperative is emphasizing the importance to rest in renewal of this commandment. That highlights the value of letting your bodies to recharge, but it encourages us to prioritize our spiritual lives and our spiritual well-beings, as well as take time to connect one with God, with ourselves. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy, keep it separated. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it separated. Better yet, you can call it prioritizing our spiritual well-being, where we can acknowledge the dependence on God, recognizing that the rest of our renewal is essential to our living healthy and balanced life and fulfilling what we need to do. It's this simple. But the main thing is, most people are going to fall to doctrine and commandments of a man, and they're going to let them pull their eyes over there. So that's why I say so many people deserve to go to hell. It's unreal. Because they're going to hold on to doctrine of men. They're going to hold on. Now, I don't care what you tell them, they're going to hold on to it. In Isaiah 58 in verse 13, it says, if. Starting off, if. Seeing people sitting there, oh, it's absolute. No, if. Providing thou turn away thy foot, thy desire from the Sabbath. So your foot means desire. So if you turn your desire from the Sabbath, not your Sabbath, not your Sabbath, your Sabbath. You had TD Jakes said that once before. He said my Sabbath day, I was Sabbath Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the Sabbath day, the Thursday, the Sabbath day for y'all done paid him all that money. Every day is a rest to him. But it's telling you God has one, and you have chosen to take on yours. If you turn your desire from the Sabbath, from doing the pleasure on he's my holy day, my separated day, and you're going to turn from my separated day and call the Sabbath a delight and separated of the Lord, of the Spirit of God, honorable, thou shalt honor him, not doing thy own ways, nor finding thy own pleasure, nor speaking thy own words. Then thou shalt delight in the Spirit of God, in the Lord. And I will cause thee to ride upon the heights in the places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. So if you decide you ain't gonna do it, if you see how he started out, if but some people are not going to do it. Some people, he's still going to do it. Okay, please keep thinking that. One less we got to worry about. One less we got to worry about. Mankind, and I want to understand, mankind, that's talking about man and woman. We are driven by desires. We are driven by desires. It's a natural wanting to pursue and bringing pleasure and fulfillment, a satisfaction to ourselves. However, problem arises when we prioritize our fleshly desires over spiritual desires. Could you agree with that? See, this is the thing. This is why we have an issue. Because our problem is we like to prioritize our fleshly over spiritual. And the spiritual desires is what we're looking for from God. So the Bible even tells us that flesh is against the spirit is against the flesh. This means that these two things, these two desires on human and on the, you're trying to put them on the same level as these direct oppositions that God desires for us. So we got these flesh desires, like people sitting there saying, well, I don't really have the desire. Yeah, okay. Desires like the thing of adultery. Fleshly desires. See, those are fleshly desires. Fleshly desires, fornication and drunkenness. God lives and his desires is life of purity and holiness. From that stuff. Holiness from that. So when you prioritize human desires over God desires, you can quickly find yourselves in conflict with God. And you're going to experience shame and guilt, turmoil as a result to your actions. When we choose to align ourselves to with God, we can experience this sense of peace. We can find this joy. We can find this fulfillment that cannot be found in earthly pleasures. The Bible tells us, when you fear the Lord thy God and walk in all his ways to love your neighbor as yourselves, we're living according to God's will. This is the path that is true fulfillment and happiness. This is one of the issues that we run into. So when we're looking at life and pleasing God, we must make this conscious effort to prioritize our spiritual desires over these fleshly desires. This requires discipline, self-control, deep commitment to God's commandments. We must constantly examine our hearts and ask ourselves whether our actions are in line with God's will. When we make a mistake, we fall short, we must turn to God and remember and repent of those things. Seek forgiveness, that we make sure we doing his will, and we need to cultivate that to where we can make sure we can have a closer relationship to God, to where we can experience true enjoyment and fulfillment that comes with living a life that is pleasing to God, not to us. You got this other one where we keep talking about adultery. I got to find, because people, we do these things and we don't think nothing about it. 1 second. One second. I want to see one. I want to skip one. I want to pull one. And we looking over here. And name in vain thou shalt no Sabbath day. Man servant, nay servant. Let's honor their father. Kill shall not kill. False witness, neighbor house. And thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, nor covet thy neighbor's wife. Bingo. That's the one we want right there. We shouldn't be coveting that. That's silliness. Again, silliness. Because we shouldn't be committing adultery. Seeking to commit adultery. But then do that remain significant today? 100%. 100%. It speaks of the importance of infidelity and the commitment of a relationship between a man and a woman. So you rather commit adultery, an act of engaging of a sexual act with someone else who is one's wife or someone's husband. That is considered a serious breach. A serious breach, a trespass, an offense in the covenant that was made with God. No way you can get around that. In fact, I want to take you somewhere. Thinking about that. Proverbs chapter 6. Chapter 6. And it's telling you, right? It's telling us. It says, but whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. I didn't say it. The Bible said it. If you commit adultery, you got any husband out there, any woman out there, any wife out there committing adultery, they dumb as a rock, because the Bible tells you they lack understanding. Yeah, I just, I did because he did. It makes you dumb as a rock. It's no sugarcoat. It makes you dumb. People out there with how call themselves having two wives. They dumb, and the ones who living in that is just as dumb. Dumb as a rock. Sitting there, we can have as many wives and all. Dumb as a rock. This is the problem right there. He doeth it, destroy his own soul. People, I don't know. People, they like to sit under people, and it's becoming worse and worse. And in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10, it says, "The man that committeth adultery with another man's wife." You see, these are MANs, so you can flip it the other way. What it's telling us, he committed adultery with his neighbor's wife. The adulterer and the adulteress should surely be put to death, rightfully so. They should be dead as a doorknob. Makes you nothing but a harlot. Makes you a whore of Israel. And you should not be in the kingdom. Period. These are very straight up front things. Hebrews chapter 10, and this is why I say this. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26, it says this. Hebrews 10:26. For if we sin, so it's saying for providing we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sin. So sacrifice is established covenant. So there remaineth no more established covenants for that sin. None. So if you're out there, and this is for men and women alike, you out there sinning, you out there committing adultery, I'll tell you what, I'm the worst person to pray for you. Because you should go to hell. You should go to the lake of fire. What about you? That's including me too. You should go there. Sitting there thinking with the wrong part of your body. Pure ignorance. This is the main reason why, even as divorce in America reaches its highs, it's so high today. And we have people who teach the same silliness. And they tell you God divorced Israel. The stupidest thing in the world. So then they hold it true that God permits us to do the same thing. He permits us to do that. But the same thing is what I told you from the beginning. See, God don't have no reason to lie to nobody, because we ain't nothing to him, no way. But when we look at this in Isaiah chapter 50, verse 1, he's asking the question. Thus saith the Lord. This is the Spirit of God talking. He says, where's the bill of your mother's divorcement? So our forefather, he said he divorced Israel. He's asking each and every one of us, where in the hell is it? Where is it? Where is your mother's divorce? Where is it? Go get it. Show him that in the book where he divorced Israel. Show it to him. Whom I have put away. I put her away. I didn't divorce her. I put her away. Oh, well, divorce is like it's just like divorce. And put away is the same. No, again, they dumb as a rock. He's asking a clear question. It said, thus said the Lord, thus said the Spirit of God. Where is the bill of your mother's divorcement? whom I put away. I put her away. Which of my creditors is it whom I sold you? Who I sold you to? Tell him that. He says, remember, behold, you see right there, behold, for your iniquities ye sold yourselves. For your transgressions is your mother put away. I didn't divorce her, I put her but away, because she's a hoe. She's a hoe. So I put her but away. A lot of men, you're a hoe. So you get put away. So these questions, and most people don't even know, this is actually a rhetorical question. It's rhetorical. Because he's asking the children of Israel, which highlights two reasons. Two things that's highlighted that should make sense to all of us. Why God is angry with us as a whole. We act like hoes today. I'll tell you what. My wife, she was looking at see, I get it in what she was looking at the music award show. Black Music Award. These women look like bona fide hoes. Bona fide. But then you wonder why we get called that. They talking about how much they give away they private parts. They talk about what men want from them. They talk about what they can do to men. They talk about, and then they get on the ground and they twerking. They do all these things, and then as soon as somebody call them a hoe, as God's saying, they got a problem. Interesting. That's highly interesting. And what the main thing is, we'll sit right there and watch it. We'll sit right there and look at it. The housewives of Atlanta's hoes. Nothing but hoes. Basketball wife, hoes. Nothing but hoes. The women of Beverly Hills, hoes. Nothing but hoes. You can go down the list of every one of them, and they're nothing but hoes. And they'll glorify it and try to make it make sense. And then they're going to try to give you advice. I'm telling you, we can't make this stuff up. We cannot make this up. It's impossible. And he even asking, who is this creditors? He's asking, creditors, right there. Let me tear some of that part down. We're gonna tear some of that down a little bit. So he's asking a couple of things. He asking for the bill. So the bill, he asking for the letter of evidence. That's what he said. When he's talking about here, where's her bill? That's what he's saying right here. Where's the letter of evidence of your mother? He wants you to show in the word, where is that letter at? Where's the letter of he said he divorced him? That's what he's saying, one. But then he want to know who the creditors are. He want to know who the creditors are. So we got to understand this too. We need to understand this creditor, because this creditor is a lender or a merchant. So he's asking, what merchant or what lender has he sold you to? Who? We can't do it because it's not even in scripture. But the main thing is, we'll sit there and let some dumb man sit there who robbing you of your money, treating you like a prostitute, tell you whatever they want to tell you. Same thing you see here in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 7. It says, if a man be found stealing any of his brethren or the children of Israel, and maketh merchandise of him, selleth him, then he is a thief and shall die and shall be put away the evil from among Israel. So the same thing, he's holding himself for same accountable because that wouldn't be there. If somebody's sitting there and we be made merchandise of, the way we were sold as merchandise, because we being sold as merchandise then God gonna kill himself. You can see how stupid that sounds. You can see how stupid that sounds. This is what we get into. But we like to play with people. We like to sit with people because they say, oh yeah, that's right. It's just stupid stuff. The stupidest stuff you ever want to hear. I'm telling you, this is just pure silliness. People sit there and this is why you're angry. You have people who've been sold into slavery or indebted to which is common to where we looking to be obedient to God, but it's supposed to protect from being sold as merchandise. And we over here for the consequences of our disobedience to God. We sold ourselves into this slavery. We sold ourselves, and now we want to get compensated for it. We want to get compensated for it. That's why they're looking for reparations. That's why they're looking for reparations. They want to be compensated for being a hoe. Because if we didn't do all these transgressions, we wouldn't be here. Here's what it is. Our mother was put away for transgression, for sinning and offenses and rebelling against God. Sacrilege. That's why we're here. Because we broken the covenant with God. And we were committing spiritual adultery. And we became enslaved. So we paying for the consequences of our actions. The disobedient commandments to God. Plain and simple. And what he tell us, you don't commit adultery. Guess what we did? We committed adultery. We doing spiritual fornication like it was unreal. Spiritual adultery is unreal. Overall, it said don't commit this, but then it should remind us of the importance into where we need to trust in God in our commitment, in our aspect in our lives. We need to be encouraged to build this strong, healthy relationship in our personal life, but one with God. Based on respect, honesty, integrity, to uphold the commitment that when we are faced with this temptation and adversity, we need to know how to act right. God ain't going to fall for it. People think, oh, God will fall for it. Do you really think the people that's over in the land right now, God going to accept that? Do you really... And people are going over this our land. What you going over there for? He said, I'll bring you back there. But people, he will not be tempted. He actually tells you this. When we get over here to James chapter 1, verse 13, it says, let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempted he any man. Can no man tempt him? So you got people. Actually, let me show you what I'm saying. So we'll be all on one page, because we don't have to sugarcoat nothing here. This is not 501c3, so I don't have to sugarcoat nothing. It tells us this right up front in Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. It says, I know thy works in tribulation and poverty. He knows it. He said, but thou art rich. Don't worry, you're rich. And I know the blasphemy. I know these lies. This blasphemy of them that say they are Jews. They say they followers of Christ and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. They're the synagogue of Satan. They can act like whatever they want. ISA. They can act all they want to. It ain't going to change nothing. That's why you got people, they on the street corner telling, oh, we the people. Well, you ain't got to sit out there and say that. You know who you are. I ain't gotta sit there. Why you ain't out there? Because I'm not stupid like you. I'm not stupid like you. I don't have to do that. In fact, you can go right here to Titus chapter 1, verse 14. he's telling us right up here. It says, not giving heed to Jewish fables and commandments of men that turn you from the truth. It's telling you right up front. It's right here. We don't have to worry about nothing anybody doing. We just need to get ourselves right. We get ourselves right, then we can do the things we need to do for God. Don't worry about what other people do. Worry about what we are doing. We quick to, but you ain't to be, you ain't got to do all that. We ain't have to do all that stuff. Do what we supposed to do. They're telling you fables, tell you right there in the book. So if we tell you, but it's not like God don't, hey, God, come here, God. Hey, yeah, what's up? You know those ain't the people over there. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah. That's what it sounds like talking to God. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was them. That was not my people over there? I'm your people. Really? Really? Hell, I don't know you either. I'm telling you, we'll crack up. He tells us the same thing. We shouldn't bear false witness against thy neighbor. We do these things. These commandments is based on and provided by God directives. Just look at them as directives. Something you shouldn't be doing no way. Don't covet those statements. It's imperative. We should know what imperative. Vitally important. It's important. It's critical. So he says some things, and actually I want to show you some things because I do have them in here. And you'll see even where he does this. I'm going to show you something. I want to show you something in Leviticus. The reason why, because I want to make sure we clearly get a better understanding here. We're going to look at Leviticus chapter 11, and I'm going to share some things with you. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 4. Directive. I want to tell you what. I want everybody to understand. Everybody understand what a directive is. Just put I in there. Because I want to make sure we're clear all together. Just say I. You understand what a directive is. This is something you don't do. You don't do it. He's not asking you. You don't do it. Same thing. If it's a directive and you're not doing it correctly in the job, guess what? You can get fired. Okay. He's saying the same thing. He's saying the same thing. You can go to the fire. He ain't saying you can get fired. You can go to the fire. That's what he's saying. So I want you to understand this. Everybody agree. I just want to make sure all of us on the same boat. So what he's saying here is this. He says, nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divided the hoof. Divided the hoof. Comparing the camel, actually we're going to focus in on that camel. Because it's true of the cud, but it's divided not the hoof, it is unclean to you. Okay, so we want to get some of this understanding. We want to get some of this. Now, we'll see even in verse 10, but we're going to come back to that camel. It says, all that have not fins nor scales in the seas and the rivers, and move in the waters, and living things in the waters shall be an abomination to you. Okay, verse 13. You see all this stuff is unclean. And all these that which have abomination among the fowls, they shall not be eaten. They are the abomination. The eagle, the osprey, the osprey and the ostrich. Okay, so we got all these here. But he's telling us something what not to do. A directive. So everybody put in there, they know what a directive is. So it's telling you something, don't do it. If not, you can get killed. So the reason why we're going to go back to the camel. We want to go back to the camel for a second. The reason why I want to hit the camel, because I have some information here. Got some information. I want to show you what is going on. Why he brought up the camel first. Why he brought him up first. And most people don't know this, but I want to show it to you. I want to make sure you see it. Because the camel, you can get this thing called they have parasites in them. These parasites. And you can get this Osiris. It's called Osiris. I'm going to put this word up to where you can see it, because I had to write that down to make sure. And I thought I wrote it down. I thought I wrote it down, but I might didn't. But it's called Osiris. And I'll spell it out for you in a little while. But I want to show you what it actually does. What it does, I'm showing it to you here. Osiris, it causes blindness from eating the meat. That's what you see right there. And you see people, and it's a parasite. It's a worm called an Osiris. You can actually look it up, and I spell it out. I thought I had it. I do apologize. I thought I did have it. I thought I spelled it out for you. But you'll see, this is what it's called from eating eating the flesh of camels. And Osiris is ONCHOCERCIASIS. So just keep that in mind. Go look it up in your time and go back and look at the video, and you can actually pull that name up again. But you can see this is why they get this. This happens to where this disease, this parasites, it attacks your eyes. It attacks your blindness to where you can't see. This is why he's telling you in the same thing. Why we cannot sit there and we don't supposed to be getting tied up with these meats. It's unclean to you. He's telling you why, because it got these parasites in there. And people, and I've seen people, even I used to look at oh man, I can't even think of the guy's name. He used to eat anything. I can't even think of the name of the show, but he eat anything. As he eating anything, yeah, I've seen he ate camel before, and they eat camel, but it has a parasite in there which can cause blindness. But this is should show you a standpoint of the dietary laws that's being attended, but it's set for Israelites. It's set for these people. It's set for the Hebrew children. These showing you distinct. We're supposed to be separated. Yeah, I appreciate it, Elder Lynn. Appreciate it. Zimmerman. Yeah, that was bizarre. Thank you. Bizarre Foods. That's what it was. It was Bizarre Foods. And on that exact show, he was eating camel. He was actually eating camel. But the problem with that is why he tells us we have to be a holy people. We have to be separated. We have to be a separated people. And we have to understand what these directives, these rules, and showing what these practices are. We got to distinguish ourselves from those type of cultures that is around and about us. So by avoiding these certain foods, it don't mean you have to go stay in a little hut in a little bitty area like you got some camps there goes living separated from everybody. It's not saying do that. Don't indulge or commit yourself to that type of foods and of that living. That dietary law that teaches you to where you can get caught up. And that's what happens. That's what happens to a lot of people. So we got to understand what's going on there. Those are just one. I didn't want to get into the swine because it's I can't deal with too many worms. That's just me. But then we have when it's talking about the ocean, and I know a lot of people, and you don't have to be embarrassed. And I'm not going to even embarrass you by asking you guys to put up your hands. But if you want to sit there, people who still eating fish without fins or scales, if the fish don't have fins or if the fish don't have scales, if it don't have one or the other, it has to have both. Keep in mind what I'm saying. If you're going to eat a fish, it has to have both. It has to have fins and scales. And they got a spiritual side to it, which I will probably get into it on another teaching. But I want to tell you the reason why this has these issues. Because the same thing, because the ones without fins and scales, they carry also parasites. And these parasites is harmful to humans. If you consume them, the same example like a lot of us like to eat shellfish. A lot of us like to eat shrimp. A lot of us like to eat crabs. A lot of us like to eat lobsters. And they not knowing what the back end is, what it can get you. But they accumulate these high level of toxins that can cause illness in us automatically. Shellfish and shrimp and crabs, when they get these toxins, they have high quantities of it. And some of our bodies just being operating one way to where they get away with stuff. But it will catch up with you. One of them is mercury. Mercury. Think about that. Mercury. The reason why I want you to see mercury, and actually I'm going to put this up. I'm not ending, but I just want to put this up to where you can see it right there. I want you to see that. I want you to see it clear. I'm not ending, but I just want to show you, because I'm going to go through some of these different words and what's going on. But mercury, I want to show you what mercury does, because mercury is a heavy metal that accumulated in the tissues. Because the fish going to eat it, they don't have veins to where they can get rid of the pollutants in what they consume. But these tissues of these fish and these shellfish, including the shrimp, the crab, and the lobster, it causes this neurological problems if they consume it. And then if you start consuming it and you expose and you can induce yourself to this issue. Now with this, I want you to understand what this does to you. Because I wanted to make sure it's clear, and I actually made a note of this to make sure I can make sure you're clear on this. One, it can hit your central nervous system. And that'll result into irritability, fatigue, behavioral changes, tumors, headaches, hearing, and really cognitive hearing loss. It even does it. Dysphoria, incoordination, even death. The crazy thing is a lot of people sit there, don't think it does, but it also causes where you can have irritation with your eyes and skin, the stomach, having these cough, these chest pains, difficulty breathing, insomnia, irritability, indecision, weakness, or exhaustion, even causes loss of weight. All right there. All right in there. This is the problem that we have. We have another one with the ones without scales. These fish without fins or scales. This is why we sitting there, and it's so important. We have another thing what they call biotoxins. Biotoxins. And I want to make sure I want to go through this in detail, because I wanted you to understand why he's saying what he's saying, why these directives are there. This is why. These toxins produce certain types of algae that accumulate in the tissues of these shellfish. And you feed on them. These causes health problems. Health problems. You can have intestinal problems. You can have this even diarrhea problems, vomiting, abdominal pain. These things all come right from this biotoxins. Have you ever had a problem where people be impaired, cognitive impairment, or you have a brain fog, memory loss, depression, anxiety, or you have these mood imbalances? Have you ever had people, or do you know people with eczema? Or what they call it, eczema, but that might be pronounced. I think it's eczema. I think that's the way it's supposed to be pronounced. Eczema. Paralysis, rashes, fatigue, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibroid. I can't even pronounce it. Fibroid something. I can't pronounce, but I can put it up later if they need that. That come from the biotoxins that is in shellfish and lobsters and all that. So a lot of us have these problems. A lot of us have eczemas and all this behind eating this stuff and didn't know where it's coming from. And the doctors won't even tell you this. Well, they probably don't know themselves. Probably don't know themselves. But you have another one. Cadmium. Cadmium. This is the stuff that's in there. They have these metals that accumulate, these liquid metals that accumulated in these things, in these shellfish. It causes kidney and liver damage if you consume in those amounts. Think about that. Kidney and liver damage. And the crazy part is, you can get the same thing even eating mushrooms. Kidney and liver damage. They're not going to tell you this. Did you know mushrooms contain high levels of cadmium? Mushrooms. Yeah, I gotta have my mushrooms. I gotta have my mushrooms. Okay, all right. You have your mushrooms. But this is what's going on. This is why we have these issues. This is why it's so important to make sure we watch what we are consuming. Watch what we are consuming. We have this one, pilocyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These same thing, these compounds, that's what they call these compounds is found in the tissues of shellfish. And they live in these areas. Now, mainly a lot of them, you catch a lot of them where they was exposed to oil spills. Do you know when they go out there and get those fish and they get those shellfish and those crabs, don't you know they don't tell you they had got them where they was by an oil spill? Don't you know they don't tell you that? They don't have to tell you that. They don't even have to tell you that. The reason why I'm saying that, okay, let's take for example, let's say they went crabbing and they went to this far off distant place and they got all these crabs and now they sell them all over the world. And a lot of them ended up in your neighboring state and you consuming it. Did you know that same thing, that hydrocarbons, did you know that causes cancer? And if you're a pregnant woman with young, it says even especially you should not even be consuming it. Interesting, isn't it? We just on shellfish. Let's look at it a little bit more. What about these fowls of the air? I'm telling you, my brother was telling me we got a cousin. Sitting there, man, he want to eat a puma. Okay, and he wondering why he's sick, but he want to eat a puma. I don't get it, but that's one of the things he's doing. But we got fowls of the air. In God's standpoint, birds of prey. They're scavengers, and they're more prone to carry diseases, parasites. That's harmful to humans again. All this stuff is harmful to humans. And most people don't even know that these scavengers can make you get tuberculosis. These scavenger birds that you consume. Scavenger birds that you can consume. You have this avian influenza. Better known, bird flu. And once you consuming these birds, it opens you up, and sometimes this is fatal. I didn't know that. I had to do a little bit more research because it's a little bit more fatal, and it can really jack you up. But if you don't eat those, some people don't eat these birds of prey. But I had an aunt. She used to eat hawk. I watched her do it one time. Me and my brother and them, we was out there shooting, but we doing what we doing. We was young, and Satan be going hunting with us. And we seen a hawk, and we decided to shoot the hawk. Just shot the hawk, and my cousin brought it home, and his mama cooked it up. So I didn't eat it, but she sure ate it. She said that was good. But hey, that's the one thing. But then we had another one. Salmonella. This bacteria is also found in these birds' intestinal tracts. Did you know that? So with these scavengers, and it's found in the intestinal tracts, so it'll go out and it'll support their flesh. And once it goes into the flesh, you eat the flesh, it's in you. I'm telling you, we can't get around this. Campylobacter, a bacteria that can be found in intestinal birds, causes poison in humans. Telling you, we can't get around this stuff. But he's telling us what not to eat. He tells us what not to eat. in wheat field, now we can eat it. Histoplasma, this is a fungus infection that can cause by inhaling the pores, the bird droppings. They accumulate in birds, they roost in calves, so people have them by there, but you're supposed to avoid these birds at all costs. At all costs. So with that, I just want people to understand something. I want people to really pay attention to what's going on. So I'm gonna share a story with you. We get ready to go out, but I'm gonna share a story with you just so I want you to understand something. We're gonna look at this in a certain way. And this was a man. He'd been separated from all other men. This man separated from all other men. And as this man was separated, he had a way of living and that brought him peace and joy and happiness. And he wanted other people to experience the way that he was living, the same enjoyment. So what this man did, he hired him a prophet. He hired a prophet to go out throughout the land and declare that God has chosen him to be this messenger to his people. So this man preached about this lifestyle that was unlike anyone else in the world, this lifestyle that he had. The lifestyle he lived was of peace and happiness. He spoke of the covenants of God and how he made this with his people, and he chosen these people. If they be followers of him, he promised them eternal life and their happiness if they followed his teachings and everything within it. He urged all the followers to abstain from certain things, certain foods, even certain things not to learn from. So they had to live separated from eating these things and not to indulge in other ones. So the man's focus was intently but what he taught was really strict. He taught, but it was a strict way that he taught, and was straightforward about it. So the followers admired him, thinking he was being righteous and devoted towards God. They believed in his ways, and they believed he was actually being a mouthpiece of God and the teachings that he did. So showing that one path. So as time passed on, people who had been following his ways, they started questioning his rules. So they wondered why they couldn't eat certain things. And they started really questioning it. And some of the stuff they loved consuming once before. And it became part of them where they wanted to get back into eating some of those things because they found some happiness in those. So some of them started breaking some of the rules and they're indulging it. But the man who was giving them this word of truth, he reminded them of his promise. And it said something. It said, I will not break my promise, nor will I change the rules that I have given you. That should have resonated with them all. But if you want to experience the peace and happiness that I have, you must follow the rules that I have set forth. So one day this group of followers, they rebelled against his teachings, and they decided they would no longer follow this man's strict ways, his dietary laws that he had mandated to separate life in this land. So they thought they can find happiness if they go back into the world and live separated back into society forevermore. So the rebellion deeply angered this man, and it reminded him of the covenant that he had with God, that he promised that he would live this life of peace and happiness. But the word, as he's telling even people this, it just fell on deaf ears, and people rebelled and they started their own community. Years went by, the man community continued. He ate and lived separated from the others. They adhered to his strict ways, his strict teachings, and what he was doing. They continued to follow his rules. Their commitment and their way of life brought them peace and happiness, free of diseases, free of sickness. They was content to live that separated life in the world. Meanwhile, the group that rebelled had left the man's community. They started to struggle to find happiness in the world. Many of them, they end up falling to diseases, sicknesses. Their freedom that they once sought had brought them chaos and misery. They longed for peace and happiness that they once had in the community. Years later, the same group come back and return to this man's community and ask for forgiveness, and if they can be readmitted back into this community. Since they had never done this before, the man who had never broken the promise of God, he welcomed them back with open arms. So the man's covenant with God remained true, and those who followed him continued to experience life of peace and joy and happiness, eating and living separated. For those who didn't understand his ways, this man's teachings was a testament of the power of faith and commitment and the promise of a better life. So this is the way on what we do on when we want to have a better understanding on how we can have this type of life with God. And I'm going to show you this, and we're going to go through a few, and we're going to come right on out. And I want to show you right here. We're going to look at Exodus chapter 19. I want to show you right here, chapter 19, verse 5 and verse 6. We have to remember what the Spirit said. It says, now therefore, if, meaning providing you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, a separated nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. Speak this to them. The same as he said, and it kept on following, it goes down and it trickled right down into Psalms chapter 15, verse 1 and 2. And the Lord shall abide in this, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Spirit of God, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? Who shall be there? He that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh in the truth in his heart. Reminding us of this same man. Because he hold to it and he held to it for certain reasons, but we just getting our application on what we need to be focused on. In Hebrews chapter 13, looking at verse 8, picking up a little bit more information, it's telling us right here, it says, Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever. But it's telling you more so when we look at it in a spiritual way, it's telling us the same way. We're going to look at what it means. It meaning this, it's saying salvation of the anointed way is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So it never changed. It never changed. So we need to learn the importance of obedience, faithfulness, righteousness. The life of a follower of Christ. This parable should give us the power of commitment and the consequences of straying that put forth in that man's teachings. So I'm going to give you a few to where we can remember, and hopefully that you can walk away with these tools and put them in there. And as you go through a lot of my studies and these things as you go through forward, it will help you in your studies as always. In Isaiah chapter 43, it's telling us something that's pretty peculiar in verse 10. It says, ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, saith the Spirit of God, and my servant whom I have chosen, that ye may know and believe me and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. Keep that in mind for each and every one of us as we move forward. Because same as I said, the key is obedience. The key is 100% obedience. And we'll see the same thing as it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13. It holds the same thing. As we all sat here, and I appreciate everyone that was here, let us hear the whole conclusion of the whole matter. Desire God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. This is the whole duty of man. As we're going on more, we're building on this same understanding. We're going to keep building to where we're going to make sure this application is right there. We see this in Revelation in the back of the book, Revelation chapter 22, and we're going to look at verse 14. Wisdom is given, and blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter through the gates into the city. For all without a dog, sorcerers, whoremongers, and murderers, and idolatry, whosoever loveth maketh a lie. I, Yahushua, I, salvation, have sent my messengers to testify to you these things in the churches and the bodies, that I am the root and offspring of David, my beloved. I am the bright and morning star. So my question to you is, he already said, for all without a dogs. So we want to know which one of you, and you don't have to put it in there, but you know which one you are, and you know within yourself. As it says in Proverbs chapter 26, verse 11. As a dog returned to his vomit, so a fool returned to his folly. So this, we should understand what is happening and what we need to be doing. So hopefully through this, we can make sure that each and everything that we have done, we remember a couple of things. God revealed his oracles in the commandments on the Mount Sinai of disobedience is what he revealed to us. His moral and ethical guidance of those commandments that you see in chapter 20 was talking about an ethical conduct that we should not get involved in because it's according to the flesh. It showed the framework on what we was looking at, on what we should be doing, and what we should never get in contact to in the future. So hopefully through this we understand a lot more as we go through and went through this here are the commandments, the 10 commandments. Understanding, are they significant for the modern time? Yeah, because it reveals sin. So the same as I thank everybody, the same as this evening at 3 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Eastern. We'll be over at King James Bible University. If you haven't had a chance, please go over there, and you can see that there at that time at 3 o'clock that time. Now, if you're part of the baptism or you're part of the blockchain, I'm asking for people Pacific. If you're part of those, please make sure that you can join us for a few minutes in the back area to where we have some important information we want to share with you. People who just want to just hear, we asking you guys not to attend this one, because this is more for people who's going to be attending there, and that's what this one is for. So 1 second, I just want to make sure. 1 second. So right now, if you refresh your screens, you'll see it there in the description. And hopefully that you guys will come back there. And I'm mainly looking for the main ones who actually being part of the baptism. So the baptism or the blockchain. But other than that, I appreciate everybody who came over. Hopefully we learned something that was very important for each and every one of us. But to understand how these spiritual words going to work with you, now as you go through teachings, you know what things are. It should help you out a lot more in understanding God's word. So with that, I say to each and every person, until later on, and I'm getting ready to go into the back, you'll see it in the description. Until then, I say to each and every person, Shalom.